That afternoon, I began hosing down the roof with water to make it difficult for passing rioters to throw a Molotov up there and set the house afire if they came by the alleyway. Some of my neighbors were doing the same. The rabid leftist across the street, a guy with a little goatee like Trotsky and an earring, came over and offered me a blank check if I would loan him my .22 pistol for the duration of the riots. He said his girlfriend was so scared she had been unable to sleep, and he wanted it to give her a feeling of security. About 2 weeks beforehand, this guy had given me a long, smug lecture about the evils of guns in private hands. I gave him the cold shoulder and told him to go up the street to the gun shop if he needed a gun. He said, "They've got a 90-day waiting period. I already tried." I told him, "You're shit out of luck then, I guess." Can you even appreciate the irony? That is called being hoisted by your own petard. It was true. The guy didn't appreciate the irony. He was a creature of emotion and now felt fear, maybe for the first time in his pathetic life. Ah, the utter blindness to self-knowledge of the liberal mind. I had a roll of rusty barbed wire I ran completely around the property over the little chain-link fence. It was the only thing I could think of to give some measure of safety to our little dollhouse. I actually wired broken glass bottles to the tops of the gates and locked the latches shut from the inside with big, thick padlocks. My wife came out with sandwiches while I was working and, as usual, had a good laugh at me. Not in a mean way, just amused a bit at how grimly I was going about the task. The previous tenant had left the barbed wire, a half-dozen animal traps, and some buckets of nails. Only the week beforehand, I was complaining to the landlord about the big fat coil of rusty barbed wire in the outdoor garage. I set the animal traps in the weeds on the other sides of the gates, because they were the most likely spots for a rioter to try to get a handhold to leap over the fence and land on the other side. Then I set my wife to making caltrops out of the nails using some 10-penny wire. In about 2 hours, we had made a couple dozen, and I spread these all over the front lawn, hidden by blades of grass. Since I had never made a caltrop before in my life, I had a weird sense of accomplishment at this. The sun was going down again, and everybody on the block was vanishing into their homes on cue. I was starting to feel like Richard Matheson's character in I Am Legend, trying to get back into my shelter with my preps before the sun went down, before the vampires woke up. The police helicopters were flying overhead so often it looked like Robert Duvall's Attack on the Beach in Apocalypse Now. That night, it was like deja vu of the previous night, except 10 times worse. They now had burned most of South Central to the ground and were working their way steadily north towards Sunset Boulevard. I had this sense of some epic confrontation approaching when they left the ghetto and started to hit the white neighborhoods the following day. I went up on the roof to try resting my .203 in various gutter brackets and aiming at different parts of the streets to see if I had a clear field of fire if it came to that. A police helicopter passed directly overhead and must have seen me with the rifle, but when he made a second pass after turning around, I had dropped it into the gutter with my ammo and thrown some leaves over it, then pretended to be sweeping up on the roof so he might think he had seen a broomstick instead of a rifle. The thing about all this is that it was so out of character for me, and yet it all seemed to be so instinctual. I was starting to feel like I had another person inside of me for 27 years, and it took the riots to bring my true nature out. I was discovering that I was a survivalist. That was the real person inside of me. It was my real nature coming to the fore under stress. When the sun went down and the long night began, I crawled down inside the house and set up my vigil in front of the television with a pot of strong black coffee. I had not slept more than 2 hours in the past 2 days, and I didn't feel tired, so much as weary from anxiousness. Guys, the only reason I have written all this is to set you up for the third day, which is when the shit hit the fan. The rest of this was all just prologue.